Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Candice Smiley. Here we trust the ningle and we tell the truth. This is a podcast. We are looking to have conversations that matter, conversations that take courage to engage in, where we cut through the noise that exists online to bring you incredible content, amazing speakers, and stories to inspire you to live your best, listen to yourself, and tell the truth of who you are and who you just might become. All right. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast. I am your host, Candice Smiley, and I am so glad you are here. Thank you for being here. So today's episode, we're going to talk about Montessori. We're going to talk about homeschooling. We're going to talk about tiny house living. We're going to talk about a few things. Usually I put these more personal podcasts on my new series, the Girlfriend Survival Guide, which is really all the nittier, grittier, dirtier, gossipier version of my story that I'm now coming and sharing with you. That will be launching on Sundays. So if you haven't had a chance to listen in, or if you did listen in and you were highly confused, that's what that is. Just looking to offer a little bit more, a different take, but I know some people prefer more of the educational podcast, which you will find here on the main channel of Great Triple Podcast, and the gossipier story version of my story and others, women who are healing, transforming, choosing powerfully for themselves. That will be on Sundays, and this will continue to launch on Thursdays. So I wanted to talk to you about Montessori and homeschooling, because I do get a lot of questions about that. Now, obviously, I'm coming from you. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. If you're listening in live through audio, you'll be able to view this video on YouTube. And you do actually see me coming from my tiny home. You will see my small little dog who's asleep. My daughter's actually behind me. She's currently working on some school right now. I've had the pleasure of being a homeschool kid myself. So I actually went to school, traditional school. Did the preschool, play school thing, kindergarten, grade 1 until grade 4. Partway through grade 4, my parents decided to pull me and my younger brother out of class in order to try homeschooling. Reason for this is the school wanted to label my brother with attention disorders, and my mom was not having any of it. She really just saw my brother for who he was and said she didn't want to have him labeled or medicated, and that was her personal choice. No, not saying anybody about anything else or anybody else's choices. That was her choice. She pulled us out. And frankly, it was probably a really good move for him, because he learned how to manage his challenges without any kind of medication, which was, again, was just a personal choice for us and our family. But I also learned that I was highly independent, and always was, even in school, was highly independent, like to learn on my own, study on my own. I loved reading. I was a voracious reader. And that continued when I came home. So my mom was my teacher. My dad was my principal. I grew up surrounded by my community. I did a ton of stuff in the community. I did sewing lessons, swimming lessons, singing lessons, choir. We were heavily involved in our church and our youth group and our community. I loved growing up. Every year we had the option to continue to be homeschool kids, or we could decide to go back to school. My brother did end up taking 11 and 12 in the local high school, and enjoyed that. I went all the way till grade 12. I actually graduated when I was 16. I did a few Arsha classes between 17 and 18. Ended up needing to do a year of upgrading because none of the universities or colleges I wanted to go into would recognize my non-Alberta transcripts. And I could have challenged the exams, but I did a year of upgrading, got all of the qualifications they needed, and then went back in, which, to be honest, I really, really loved. It was great to hang out. I hung out at the local college not too far from the farm. And it was really great. Loved it. It was sort of an in-between year. I had worked for a couple of years. So when I finally got to university, I was actually 20 years old, and I didn't mind it. I have learned a lot. I worked full-time between 18 and 20, got some great life experience in the retail world. I never felt hindered, even though I had to jump through some extra hoops to be accepted into the universities at the time. I think it's a little bit different now. But I certainly loved the entire experience. I loved how I had control. And one of the biggest things I noticed when I got to university is it didn't actually harm me at all. In fact, I was shocked when I went to university and the number of classes where teachers would literally read from the textbooks. And I was like, I read this last night, because I would actually do the reading. But they would give me cheat sheets before I would go into exams, with formulas and stuff like this. And I was like, what? Because, of course, my mother and father never let me do this. I think that they were secretly afraid that they wouldn't prepare us enough for life. And so we didn't get any passes whatsoever. But one of the things I think that homeschooling really set me up for was I had learned to interact with a lot of different peoples of different age groups. I had the opportunities that weren't normally afforded to, especially when you're in high school, because you're overloaded, I think, with a lot of homework, not saying anything bad about the school system or anything, but my evenings were a lot freer because everything we did was at home. We structured our schooling around our farming schedule. So, September, October, we're in the fields, and so was May and April, May, and June. So we would work in the summers if we needed to. We made our scheduled work for our lives, and I really, really loved that. I also learned a lot about owning my own schedule and being a self-starter, because you don't have a teacher. You have to get yourself up out of bed. Yes, I had my mother. My mother worked permanent nights at the hospital here, and so there was a number of days during the week where I had to get my own self up. And so I was really invested in my own education. I was really involved in all of that. I loved being a homeschool kid. Pardon the interruption while you're listening to our show. I do hope you are enjoying the content that we are sharing with you today. This is a sponsored advertisement from Fuss for AI. This is an online service that will save you hours of time with your content creation. So this is really important for me to share, because you guys know, having listened to the podcast for a while, that words matter. So this is really a time saving device. I am stoked about being able to promote it to you. If you are looking to have a blog, or you have a website, or you regularly create posts, and you need to be able to add written word to increase your value, to add to your impact, and to add to your credibility, really, you simply type in your title, and the AI software goes to work and gives you high quality original articles. So that's exciting. You do need to review the article, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes, they say, to make necessary edits. Of course, add in your own flair, maybe an intro and an outro or something like that. But you get 3 free articles just for creating an account and signing up. After that, if you want to pay for the service, it's a monthly service. And to be honest with you, I have spent some really decent money both on copywriters and on copywriters from Fiverr who are creating blog posts for me. And frankly, these blogs have triple the number of words. And so pretty stoked about that. It is an online monthly subscription service. If you do decide that you're going to do that, you can use code RIPPLE 2022. So that's Ripple 2022. And you will get 5 free articles on top of those 3. So that's 8 free articles just for signing up and getting your paid account. Why waste time writing content for yourself when you can get Fuss for AI to do it for you? Try out their service today and see how much time it can save you. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the show. So one of the things I really wanted to impart to my kids when I finally had it was that same opportunity to be able to learn how to manage your own time, to be able to interact with lots of different people, not just the same 30 or 40 or 50, 60 kids within your same age group, but a whole group of them. Now, one of the number one questions that I get a lot of, especially my parents got, and now I certainly get, is this question about socialization. And again, as I say, I wasn't just socialized with, 30, 60, 100 or so kids that I went to all the time, being influenced by how they were being raised and their parents and stuff like this. I was heavily involved in the community with multiple different age groups, dealing with lots of different things. I feel like that had a very positive impact on me. And again, I'm not knocking anybody in the school system. I don't want to start any fights. But for me, I saw an incredible amount of value with being socialized with a number of different groups. Now, I do know that children learn exceptionally well from other kids. And that's one of the reasons why Montessori really stood out for me. Now, I don't know if you've had any chance to look up Montessori, Maria Montessori, Dr. Maria Montessori, incredible woman. She has done so much. I'm in love with the philosophy. So I normally keep my own opinions to myself, but on this episode, I will be sharing how much I really appreciate Montessori. I would have loved to have gone to a Montessori school or been educated in the Montessori method when I was a kid. One of my favorite things about the Montessori method is it really says, if the child can do something, let the child do that thing. Even if it takes longer, even if they are not as good at it in the beginning, we have to let our children do and try. My cousin recently put her youngest one into a Montessori play school, and she texted me afterward, and she's like, we just put our little guy into Montessori. There were no toys in the classroom. What are they like? What? And I laughed because I had never really thought about it, because I guess I've been learning about the Montessori method for a while. And they say that work is the play of the child and play is the work of the child, right? There's this idea that play is children's work, and I totally agree with it. So recently I have decided to become Montessori certified, and I'm doing that through the North American Montessori, what's it called here? Center, North American Montessori Center. I've got my books up there. And I won't be able to, teach. I don't have my teaching degree, so I won't actually be able to teach. But it's been really wonderful to really immerse myself in the Montessori method and how they teach things. And to be honest, I geek out on the regular with this. Now, if you are a mom and you're listening in and you've been curious about Montessori, she has got a ton of books. Like, she has written so many books. They're on Amazon. They are on Audible. Go and download them. Recently, I have been reading The Absorbent Mind, which is all about this very, like, how much children absorb in the very beginning. As you can tell, I'm a little bit excited about this. But so this Montessori method, which is really, it is not about looking at a child as, an empty vessel and we need to pour knowledge in and fill them with this. It's that we need to inspire their creativity. We need to create safe spaces for them to learn, and the child directs their learning. Now, there's a lot of, question about what that actually means. And the way I understand it is that children have this beautiful natural curiosity. I mean, the amount that a child learns in those first, very, very, very first few years is equivalent to like university degrees. Like, it's years and years and years and years and years smushed into like 2-3 years, right? Just incredible the amount they learn. They learn how to speak, they learn how to walk, they learn how to, go from being a blob into a tiny person who eventually goes to school at 6 years old and that sort of thing. There is so much that children learn. And so Montessori had this idea, and she's done a lot, first working with children who had learning issues. So maybe they were blind or they were deaf or something like that. So there was an impediment to their being able to learn in the same way at the time. And then she started working with underprivileged children, children of the poor. And her whole idea was that um, teachers are meant to be directors, like they call themselves directress. They weren't meant to be like telling and making children just memorize facts and figures. It was about observing the child. So there's a heavy, heavy, heavy focus on observation of the child. Where are they at? What are they learning? What have they naturally picked up? Where are the holes in their learning? What are they still missing? What are they naturally drawn to? And then just to direct their attention to topics and ideas and research subjects and different tools that they can use. And the idea is, rather than supplying them with an endless amount of toys, especially noisy toys, busy toys, colorful toys, etc., these things are overstimulating. They say, what if we focused on creating these beautiful, safe spaces where children have a time of focused learning and study, where they have the opportunity to pursue what is curious and intriguing to them. I love that. I love that. So our whole day, my whole day with my children is based around creating this work time where she has a solid 3 hours where she is able to direct her learning, and I sit and observe, and I'm an active participant in that. But it's not about, math is one subject and language arts is another subject and science and another subject and botany is another subject. It's about understanding that there's this interconnectedness, this beautiful interconnectedness. So she can be curious, as she was yesterday, about blood types. And so we researched and dove into blood types and who's the universal donor and who can receive the universal things and what is the RH factor. And it was really interesting. And then, of course, she records that in her science journal. And so there's her writing that she did. She learned some new words and some spelling and, some botany, some physical health. It was this beautiful combination, all led from her own curiosity of, I'd like to learn about this today, which allowed me then, as the directress, as her, her teacher, her facilitator, to guide some of those things and then show some offshoots and some stuff like that, which has continued into today. It's been just beautiful. And I was reminded again about what child-directed education, child-directed learning actually is. And does it require a lot of investment into me? Yes, it does. It requires my attention, it requires my focus, and a lot of it. They don't do testing. There's no testing in Montessori. It is about observation. It's about, the child will demonstrate. They have learned it when they are looking for something else, when they can clearly explain it and communicate it. And they've got this beautiful method where you first introduce them to the tools. So there's no toys. They have tools, because what Montessori noticed is that children want to learn. They aren't just empty vessels where we pour information in. They want to learn. They want to learn to use their hands. And so everything she's doing, of course, I have Inara, who's nearly 8 and in grade 2, and I've got Jack, who is, just turned 1. And so I'm watching him learn how to use his pincher fingers, right? His thumb and his forefinger, mama finger, right? To learn how to pick up stuff. Learning how to do those things, learning, because that's how he's going to learn to hold a pencil, because he's going to want to learn how to communicate. And it's just really neat to see how the whole thing comes together. And so this is these levels and these bases, and she's got color codes. Anyway, I digress. If you haven't had a chance to check out some of Montessori stuff, that she's also got some great books that you can now read, and other people have invested in that and shared, even if your children aren't in a Montessori school, how you could adopt a Montessori parenting idea, which we have certainly done. We typically eschew loud, boisterous, noisy toys in favor of things like puzzles and quiet work. And I was reminded of this today, and this episode was inspired today because I was putting Jack to sleep. And so I was walking around my tiny home, which isn't very big, but I can get 4 or 5 steps across the house, walking him to sleep. And I looked over, and she, by choice, was working on some quiet stuff, her own thing at the end of the day. And she was deep in concentration. And that is the moment that we are trying to create a space big enough, like a container for, when you're a Montessori, when you believe in this Montessori idea, that the children will come to what they call normalization. And normalization is simply children will learn that there's a routine, and they will naturally do it because it feels good, because they want order. And we know this as moms, right? Our children thrive on routines, and so do we. And this normalization will be when they know what the routine is. You don't rush the ritual, right? There's a ritual to learning. There's a ritual to that. And as we create more of these rituals and routines, and they come to trust the process and trust, what we're doing, they get to these spaces of quiet where they are so engrossed in what they are learning and doing. And it's in those moments, these incredible teachable moments, where they are open and learning and accepting. And it's just, it's beautiful. And I was inspired again today that this is why I do this work. This is why I'm taking extra hours out of my week to understand more about the method, to, I'm studying, man. Like, I haven't been in school since I was like 22. So, it's a few years, not quite 20, but we're just about there. Anyway, it's been a wonderful experience, and I wanted to share that because a lot of people ask about that, and what it means and how that looks. And it goes back to that whole thing that Montessori really wanted to inspire children to be creative, to be curious, to stay curious, to follow their pursuits and their passions, and to be independent. She also focused heavily on things like communication, and the start of their year is on the 5 grade lessons and cosmic peace. And it's really amazing. And when I started Montessori, I really didn't understand these 5 grade lessons. I was focused like I've been taught, language arts and math and science and chemistry. And these are all important things. But these 5 grade lessons are essentially, how did the world begin? Where do people come from? Where did language come from? Where do numbers come from? And it's the basis, and you start there. And then cosmic peace is really understanding that we are very interconnected, which, as I've now come to see, having studied it, there is this incredible interconnectedness to life. We know this, right? Don't we? Like, we know this. Hence why I was saying, when she was learning about the blood types, we talked about science, we talked about health. She did her writing with the language arts. We did some numbers because, of course, there's adding up, there's different things like this. It was really neat because I now respect and understand that we covered all of our bases just by following her curiosity, just by staying focused. There's this element of also focusing on communication, on world peace, on understanding that choosing to use plastic, which she was learning about, that it takes plastic 500 to 1,000 years to degrade. And so she was like, wow, when I'm using plastic and I'm, getting these cheap plastic toys, then what happens with that is it goes to the landfill eventually, and it's going to take this long, and that's hurting the planet, because she's been learning about the development of the earth and recycling and all this other stuff. You come to start to realize the interconnectedness. And I think right now, more so than ever, the world is a very small place. And one of the key reasons why I've embraced this Montessori method and why I'm homeschooling my daughter in today's day and age is I want her to understand the interconnectedness. I want her to know how to socialize with lots of different kinds of people in lots of different scenarios. I want her to be an emotionally intelligent individual, and I want to have a huge impact on that. Again, I'm not knocking school. I know there are some incredible schools. I've been involved in them. I got to send Anara to an amazing Montessori preschool, which had a huge impact on, how I'm choosing to show up in her life as her facilitator, directress, you know what I mean? We're a part of an amazing school board out of Edmonton who has amazing teachers and facilitators. So, there's an amazing group of people that are out there doing this. But for me, it was incredibly important to be able to have an impact on her emotional development, especially right now. I wanted to have an opportunity for her to experience some big emotions and deal with them here. I wanted to help her understand that rituals exist, not just routines, but rituals. And from rituals come habits, and these habits form your life. And I want to have an impact on her forming these things now. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to do that. And if you're still with me, thank you so much for listening in on this episode. It was, I've had a lot of questions about it. And today I just felt inspired and I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to point you in the direction of some amazing resources. Maybe you're like me and you're a homeschool mom, or you'd like to be able to support your children more. I would highly recommend checking out the North American Montessori Center. They have some amazing home study. It's 4 hours a week, so it's totally doable for us busy moms. But I wanted to just, come home and share that, because I think about what's having an impact on me in my life now. And some of those things I learned while I was being homeschooled. I learned how to communicate. My dad went to Toastmasters for years. And so when I had to write a paper, I had to write the paper, written form, and then I had to rewrite the paper for speaking as if I was going to give a speech, because you write those two things in two very different styles. And then I had to deliver that speech to my dad. And then we talked about it, and I learned how to public speak. And then is it as any surprise, that I've had a career as a speaker, and that I love to write, and I'm working on a book. One of the books my dad gave me when I was 14 years old is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that's had a huge impact on my life. I did a lot of reading. I was a voracious reader. And one of the things that we use now that I'm using with Anara, is we use a lot of tools around us. And so we are very active members at the TELUS World of Science in Edmonton. We actively attend our museum. We're heavily involved in community option events. So is the school where we have our registration park, so we can be involved in the community. But not only that, we listen to a lot of podcasts. We listen to a lot of educational podcasts that are out there that are free. There are so many free, amazing resources. And I'm like, wow. And we can listen to an entire series and then apply that to what else that we're learning. There's so much freedom and flexibility in that. And so I think teaching her that resilience as well is just such a wonderful opportunity. We've had a chance, of course, as well, to discuss a lot of things that are happening. And so she's able to learn those things, incorporate those things, and then apply them. I have to tell you, I'm pretty excited to be learning all of this as Jack is just up and coming, because, of course, I was not quite as well versed, I don't think, in all of this when I had Anara, but I'm looking forward to sharing it moving forward. But anyway, I just wanted to come to you guys and share that with you. I'll be sharing more about what we do at Montessori and how I'm, making homeschooling work in our little tiny home. And I'm looking forward to sharing more of that with you. So thank you so much for listening. And I guess I'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks, friends.